We just talked to the new director of basketball operations on the show, and now we are welcoming in the newest assistant basketball coach for the Cougars, Quincy Lewis. Quincy, welcome to Studio B.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Wagner Seahawk alum.
Yes.
Were you the most excited person when you found out BYU football scheduled Wagner?
Hey, the fighting Seahawks, baby. Can only hope to contain them on the football field. Yeah, it's fun to see them come.
How's Wagner football?
You know, for the level they're at, they're usually pretty solid. But obviously this will be a little bit higher for them.
Yeah. Okay, you've had an interesting road, and I want to start at Wagner. How in the world did you end up at Wagner?
You know, Coach Rose could give you this story pretty good. We're playing up at College of Southern Idaho, and on a fast break, I trip, I run into a wall, I break my neck, and didn't play for the next month, and so my recruiting kind of was shaky after that, and I wound up at Wagner.
You broke your neck in a basketball game?
In a game. I was laying on the floor. Yeah.
What in the world?
Wow.
It was crazy. It was kind of scary.
Holy cow, yeah.
Yeah, so got back, didn't play as well as I could, and really my only options were Weber State and Wagner when I got back. So thought it'd be cool to go to New York, and it was a great experience.
What was it like playing for Dave Rose and a younger Dave Rose at Dixie?
You know, it was interesting because my first year at Dixie, he was an assistant to Ken Wagner, who's now at BYU Hawaii. And then my second year was his first year ever as being a head coach in college. And so I don't care what level you're at. If it's your first year as a head coach, I mean, you're swimming a little bit and you're learning and things like that. And but the thing you always knew about Coach is he was so competitive and wanting to win, and he was a great guy. You know, players love playing for him.
How much did you stay in contact with him over the years up until now that you're one of his assistants at BYU?
You know, really through all these years, not an every week phone call, but a couple times a year, keep in touch. And he was always running camps down at Dixie, so I'd go work for him, and did that for 3 or 4 summers. And obviously, when I got to Lone Peak, things really changed, because he was recruiting a lot of our players, and so we were in contact a little bit more. But it's always been a good relationship, and known he and his wife Cheryl for a long time.
How were you as a player?
As a player, geez, I was the best. No. You know what? Hopefully, I was good enough. Had a good career at Timpview. We won a couple state championships, and he went to Dixie and started for Coach, and for a couple of years, and then went to Wagner and was all-conference player there. So it was a good career.
Which of your Lone Peak players were you most like?
Not Nick or TJ. I can tell you that. Those guys are too good for me. Probably maybe a kid like a Ryan Rios, who played for me a few years back.
I remember Ryan Rios.
Yeah, a pretty skilled guy. He's a little bit smaller. Got us a state championship when he was there. But, Nick and Tej, those guys they're a little different level.
Quincy Lewis, the new assistant basketball coach at BYU, with us in Studio B on BYU Sports Nation. You've had great success, and that's a huge understatement at Lone Peak. I mean, and credit to you and what you've been doing over there. But why did you feel like now was the right time to make the jump to BYU?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've had my wife and I. We've had opportunities to go different places through our 12 years, and we've just always felt strongly about Lone Peak, and that's where we should be. And we just kind of got to a point now where we had an opportunity here with Coach, and felt really comfortable with the staff, with Tim and Terry, and now Andrew, and really like those guys. Feel comfortable with it, and it's the time.
Is this something you wanted in the past? Did you say it'd be cool to be at BYU one day?
It's interesting because when we'd been in college for 8 years, and we went to Lone Peak, and when we went to Lone Peak, we kind of said we're going to be there for 2 years and see where we're at after 2 years. And we were not sure if we want to continue on with coaching or not. And when we went to Lone Peak, it was never with the intent of, hey, we want to work into a college situation, but it's just kind of life takes you on different paths sometimes, and that's kind of where we're at.
What's been the most difficult part since the news broke about this transition?
You know what? It's just there's so many things. I think the first 4 hours once the announcement was made, I was texting, and I couldn't keep up with the texts. It was just, and then for the next 2 days, it seemed like it was about every 5-10 minutes I'd have a text from somebody else. Hey, congratulations, great to hear, all those kind of things. And so, all that stuff is great, but you get to a point where you really want to get into the meat of it all, and it's right now I'm just going through a lot of different things with the hiring process still, as far as getting all the papers signed and things like that. So, hopefully by the beginning of next week we'll really be able to roll.
What was it about your players that made it so many of them went to BYU?
You know what? I think it really started with Jackson Emery, and people don't understand with Jackson. He had some grandparents who were season ticket holders for 30 years at the University of Utah.
Oh,
yeah, and Jackson they liked Utah, and but at the time it was Steve Cleveland was the coach, and Coach Rose was the assistant, and they simply just went after him harder than Utah did. And so he went to BYU, fell in love with BYU, and that made a real impact, on his brother, I think. And then, with Tyler, obviously his dad had been there, but, the truth is, a lot of people thought that, Tyler, hey, he's just going to go to BYU because that's where Marty played, and or that's, he's 20 minutes from campus. But I will tell you, because I was right there through that whole process, that he was wide open. He was willing to go wherever. And we would play AAU tournaments through the whole spring and summer. And there was one guy who was there a lot more than everybody else to watch him, and that was Coach Rose. And at the end of the day, that's why they got him, is because they worked a little bit harder.
Do you take that now as a recruiter? Those principles, now that you're going to be in that position?
You know what? I think I learned a lot more about recruiting being on the high school side than I did when I was a coach in college for 8 years, because you really get to see how people view the recruiters coming in and what works and what doesn't work. And so I learned a lot more just sitting there watching some guys maybe not do as good a job and other guys would do a great job.
When you hear the words Lone Peak Pipeline, what comes to your mind?
You know what? It was never intended to be like that, but it's worked out well, I think, for everybody. And my only thing with the Lone Peak players that I had was I wanted them to go to a place where I felt like they could trust the head coach and they'd be in a good environment for them, and that they were going to win. And BYU checked all the boxes, and I think that's why they got Tyler and all these guys.
Describe the recruiting connections that you might have since you were on the high school side of it and played in all these national tournaments.
It's been interesting, with being out in the AAU, playing against all these guys, getting to know those coaches a little bit because you're coaching against them. You get to know them a little bit. We did a lot of out-of-state tournaments at Lone Peak, and so we're competing against the best teams in the country. One of my friends outside of Utah is a guy at Whitney Young who coached Okafor. We played them a few years ago, and I must say we got him. We beat him. Nick hit a shot, but you get to know guys like that. Last summer we were in Dubai, and the schools that were in Dubai were Huntington Prep, Simeon, and Montverde, and three of the best schools in the whole country. And we'd have breakfast every morning with those coaches, And so I've been fortunate to get to know a lot of those guys through the years.
Handling multiple personalities is quite the task as a coach. And during the break, we were talking about one of our favorites, Eric Mika, who is a huge personality and very different than a lot of different players that we've come across. How do you manage all of those differing personalities and keep them in line for the one goal of winning a championship?
There's certainly a parameter that is there for every guy, but every guy is different. You have to coach every guy different, and you have to understand who they are and get to know them from a personal level. And that's kind of the fun part about it. It's also the challenging part about it. And a guy like Eric Mika, he's a guy who was a lot of fun. He was a lot of fun, and we had fun with him too.
The greatest junior jazz player in Utah State history?
One of my favorite pictures ever that I have of at Lone Peak is Mika having 2 ball bags over his shoulders, along with carrying the water out to our bench.
His junior year, he's the water boy.
Yeah, the greatest water boy ever to be a part of a program.
He said he's the only junior jazz player ever offered a divisional scholarship.
I think KSL actually went in and filmed him playing junior jazz basketball.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. It was a funny deal with Eric.
The fact that it's him is just too perfect, that he was in that situation. Quincy, great to have you in Studio B. We look forward to what promises to be a very exciting 2016 season and wish you the best of luck.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.